Do you ever wonder why you take your pride and joy car or bike or boat or whatever to a dealership because you've got an issue with it and it takes forever to solve and there's only that one guy that can fix it and he's on annual leave? This is why. Yeah, g'day everybody and welcome back. A little bit of a distraction from the normal video, but I need to get this off my chest. I'm going to have a rant. When I did my apprenticeship, I started my apprenticeship in 1981 as a fitter and turner, which meant that I was doing my apprenticeship with tradesmen who did their apprenticeships in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s and the 70s. So, and this was a very, very different time. This was a time where it was a very misogynistic environment. There were no women, essentially, working in the trades. There was no health and safety. There was all of these massive gaps that did need to be closed. And I appreciate that and the fact that, we've gone on the journey that we have now. And to know that, my daughter, if she had chosen that path, could have gone and been an electrician or a mechanic or whatever it is that she wanted to do. Now, were we harder men back then? Well, arguably, there certainly wasn't the kind of scrutiny that there is now in terms of looking after people's feelings. If you did the wrong thing, you got a kick in the ass, and literally a number 10 steel cap boot right in the coin. But the one thing that we did better back then was transfer of knowledge. Now, an apprenticeship is a difficult time for a kid. I know it was for me. I had mates that were working as brickies labourers or doing these other non-skilled tasks that were getting adult wages when they left school, whereas I was getting very, very low wages because I was a first-year apprentice. So there's a whole network of people that you rely on during that training process. Primarily, your parents. You can't afford to be living away from home, essentially. So, you had to rely on mum and dad to, give you a roof over your head and keep you in the bare essentials that you needed. While you went through the transition from apprentice through to tradesman, which is, when I did my time, was a 4-year process. It was 5 for some trades. But the guys that I worked with really took the time to try and show you the right way to do things, explain to you why you do things a certain method, and in some instances they would explain to you a little bit of the science behind what you were working on. And, these guys, they put more time and effort into me than I probably deserved at the time. I was an asshole, and I had an attitude problem. I was full of shit. I thought I knew everything, as a lot of kids are, I guess. This is a very tumultuous time for a person in their development. That whole adolescent period, where you're transitioning from a school kid into the adult world, and all of a sudden you're confronted with adult decisions and adult consequences and all of those things, and you're still trying to learn how to walk straight. And I'm very grateful for the guys that took the time to try and show me how to do things properly. And that extends to my old man too. He tried to pass skills on to me that I just wasn't interested. And one of the biggest things that that trips up young blokes is they discover young women. So that's always a huge distraction. But getting back to the whole reason that I'm doing this rant, I got really upset a couple of weeks ago. I was talking to my son, who, of course, in my eyes, is this wonderful human being, and he's a good kid. He was never going to put rockets on the moon, but he always knew that he wanted to to work in a trade, and primarily he wanted to be a mechanic. And times being as they are, you don't get to sort of pick and choose. You take what you can get. And he was attending an industry college on the Gold Coast, where he was with an aim of trying to get an apprenticeship out of that, which he did successfully, working for a very small garage as a diesel mechanic. I think it was a four-wheel drive place. And the bastards, they don't want to teach them anything. They just want them to get in there and start working. And I think that they had this presumption that these kids have a certain amount of knowledge that they can bring, and you're going to pull that gearbox apart and rebuild it. And they don't have that knowledge. Bloody hell, apprentices don't even start learning anything until they're about a third year. They're just going to cost you money. And it's not until after they've finished their time that they really start to learn and understand, because their brain's starting to function better. They're making better decisions. So I got a bit upset. That apprenticeship ended because the guy couldn't afford to keep him on. He couldn't keep the work up. And poor old Jimmy was left out in the cold. And he tried the normal avenue where at the college where he was at, where they tried to do placements, and there's a lot of talking and sitting around and discussing, but not a lot of doing. So he got off his ass and he marched up and down Moss Street in Slacks Creek, which is where there's a lot of automotive trades, and he just door knocked, and eventually he was able to secure an apprenticeship out of that effort, and I applaud him so much for that. He got an apprenticeship as a motorcycle mechanic, and he was doing backflips. You can imagine, you get an apprenticeship with a dealership. So you'd assume that, if you're going to get a good start as an apprentice, that a dealership's going to be the place to do it. You assume a certain level of training, you assume a certain level of the fact that they acknowledge that they're going to, probably you're going to cost them money, you're not going to have billable hours and da-da-da-da-da. It's no different. It's no different. They still want their pound of flesh. They want those kids to have a certain amount of, they're not prepared to teach them the skills that they need to become a good mechanic. All they've got them doing is bolting bikes together. And in one of the dealerships that is owned by the group that my son works for, there are 4 apprentices and 1 tradesman in the workshop. Now, I know when I was a kid and I did an apprenticeship, the state award sort of had a ratio, and I can't remember what it was. It might have been 1.5 tradesmen to every apprentice or something like that. It's just not a sustainable thing. So these kids walk out of their time, and half of them end up never going back into the trade because of the bloody trauma that they've suffered, because they didn't know how to pull something apart that their service manager believes they should have known, and they end up leaving early, or they have a high turnover. It's just not good enough. The automotive trades, you've got to stay on top of your game. There's always changes in technology, different fuel management systems, different, it's all, these kids don't stand a chance. They're just nut and bolt guys. And then the whole thing ends up becoming a process of elimination by swapping parts. And I'm really disappointed that, we've got this major dealership that is treating these kids this way. And he has told me that, and there's always 2 sides to every story too. Maybe he's been a pain in the ass to get along with, and the onus is on the individual, of course, to try and make it happen. And he tells me that he will see some activity in the shop that's new and interesting, and he'll say to the guy, "Can I work with this tradesman so that I can understand this, whatever it is he's doing?" And he gets answers like, "No, you got 2 other bikes in crates out there that we need put together," and da-da-da-da-da. So that disappoints me no end. Because all these kids need, and I know, as having done an apprenticeship, all that you need to do is be able to walk out that door with enough base skills, enough base knowledge that you can fumble your way through and learn applying the same principles. And a lot of these skills are transferable. For me, I'm an industrial mechanic essentially. So I'm a fitter and turner, which I think in Canada is called a millwright, and in America I think you call them industrial mechanics. And the skills are transferable. So for me, it doesn't matter whether I'm troubleshooting an electrical problem on a motorcycle, or I'm troubleshooting an electrical problem in a panel at work, or if I'm pulling apart a carburetor, or I'm pulling apart a bottle filling valve. The principles are all the same. The skills are all the same. You're just applying it to a different component. And later in life, when you start to learn a little bit more about the engineering component, so understanding the science behind it, you can certainly apply that then to different genres. If you're a tradesman out there, or if you're a service manager out there, take the time, get these kids, show them the basics, teach them what they need to know to be able to go into the world and become a competent tradesman. Otherwise, we're just going to end up with a heap of guys. You know, you'll have 20 kids and one of them will go on into the trade and do well. It's just not good enough. You have a moral responsibility, industry, to keep turning the tradesmen over. As older guys retire or move into middle management positions, you need to fill them, and you need to fill them with kids that are going to get the skills that they need to survive in that world. It's dog eat dog, man. And you have a responsibility to teach these kids and to replace and to continue to top up industry with skilled tradesmen. And being a tradesman is something that you as kids need to be proud of. Just because you don't have a degree or an associate diploma or whatever, doesn't matter. Be proud of what you do and do it to the best of your ability and apply yourself. Don't be an arsehole. Anyway, that's it from me. Thanks for watching. We'll get back into the motorcycle stuff very soon. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and comment, and I'll catch you next time on Andy's Motorcycle Obsessions. Bye for now.